Hey, folks, welcome back to our latest edition of MSP Business School. I'm Brian Doyle from VCIO Toolbox, and with me, as always, I've got Rob Rogers and Tim McNeil, the partners over at OSR Manage. Excited
Hey,
to get
everybody.
into today's topic. So we're going to introduce something a little bit different to you now and a little bit new to our program. We're going to start doing some live case studies where we take some real world issues that we've encountered and really kind of break down some of the approaches you can take to overcome these. These will traditionally be common things that almost any one of us as an MSP have felt, or really any salesperson at all for that matter.
Yeah,
And we'll really break down how we can improve upon the process and what we could have potentially done to change the way the perception was or the outcomes were. So with that, I'm going to throw it to Rob, who's got this week's objection. I'm going to call it the handling the two-headed monster.
Right.
And let Rob kind of define what the problem was, and we'll launch right into it.
Sure.
So Rob, with that, jump on board.
All right. Thanks, Brian. So this is one of our clients, and Tim and I, had this conversation last week, I think, and
That's
it's
Friday.
one of
Yep.
yeah, and it's one of our bigger clients, but there's a caveat. It's one of the biggest accounts that we've ever seen that is still in a break fix model. Huge double-digit account, right? And they're trying to move over to the MSP model. And one of their longtime clients, a pretty good-sized monthly client, has been getting a lot of calls from competitors saying, "Dump the break fix model. Come with us. We're going to be proactive for you, and we're going to handle everything for you." And it's a company, the client's company is owned by two people. And so he has a really good relationship with one of the people and a very standoff relationship with the other guy. And the other guy was the one who was getting all these calls. And finally, they sent an email to our client and it was like, "Look, man, we've been getting so many calls on the, moving to a proactive model that we're going to start shopping you." And so he was already in the reactive and the beta position. And so he was like, "Well, I can do that. We're actively looking at the model right now. We're making changes." And so he starts talking to this, the other partner. We're going to call him aloof because that's who he is. He's just an aloof guy. He doesn't like to talk, very director type of person, bullet point guy. And so he started having these conversations and got all the way through the proposal stage. But he was on the proposal stage with two other companies now, and they have had a 20-year relationship. I think it was about a 20-year relationship.
Yeah, that sounds. I feel like that's right. Yeah, it was a long time.
Very long time. And then all of a sudden it went dark. It went dark after a 20-year relationship. Went dark. Not responding to calls, not responding to emails. A pop-in was tried, and nothing was working on Mr. Aloof. And so that was how we started the case last week. So kind of wanted to talk about that today, what we were thinking, what we were asking, all the different types of things that we were going through to try and figure out how to get him through this stage and get him into the closed deal. Did I miss anything, Tim?
Well, yeah, I think, no, that's the overview. The deeper, the second level to it is it's a large enough organization where they actually have a low-end IT person on staff. And that person...
The prospect. The prospect, you mean? The prospect. Yeah, you're right. The prospect.
Yeah. They had an IT person, or have an IT person on staff. And the reality is there's an opportunity where they could train this guy, this person who's on their client staff, could really train them to take over the level 1 help desk issues to really everything else gets escalated to them.
Yeah.
Right. So they had an issue while they were doing price comparisons from the standpoint that one of the people that came in was enough lower on a per person rate that it was a little bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah.
So our client did really everything right in the sales process, with the exception of two things. He let it go a little stale, right? He didn't talk about the proactive style. He didn't have regular meetings, right? The QBRs didn't exist because they were break fix. But once he got he was in that submissive position. From that point on, he really did do everything right. He tried to sell the client on training up their internal person to save them money, which lowered his monthly rate and gave them a much stronger value.
And let me stop you there before we get into the solution, and let's just kind of recap this and put a bow around it.
Yeah.
So we've got a customer here that's got two partners. One that was the primary point of contact that this break fix organization had a good relationship with, so they spent most of their time working through that part of the relationship.
Yep.
There was another partner where they really didn't have as much of a relationship, and that guy just by personality was, as you said, Rob, aloof. They decided that because, or we'll get into the solution, but they started hearing about proactive MSP models, no shock there.
Yep.
And they started looking at their own model, and that coupled with the fact that they're really a co-managed client because this junior IT person exists. They said, let's put this out to open bid and try to figure out whether or not we can do better than we are doing today in approaching this.
Yeah.
Your client very simply was saying that, was basically coming in with a similar or being reactive to the proposition, trying to convert to a managed services arrangement, and then putting it in where he's going to have to sacrifice because he's now going to train the other person and give up part of his share wallet. So even if he wins this deal, he's not as good as doing as well as he was yesterday. Is that a good summary of what this client's walking into?
It is. It is. It is. But there's a little bit more to it. The price point, he was able to see the price point of the proposal that came in. And even the price point that came in from his competitor was lower than he was willing to do on a per user cost. So one, he's got to give up some of his revenue to the tech person and train the tech person. And two, he's going against he's being squeezed on the price side. And so he had to sell value and he had to sell savings. And he had to sell a reactive position because he's not the one who came to the prospect with this or his client with this. Other people did. So that was what we walked into in the meeting on Friday.
Yes. So what are the steps you're looking to take? And Tim, why don't you kind of break down a little bit of what you're kind of coaching as a solution?
Yeah, so we talked about a lot of different scenarios. We had talked about the stop in. He had already done that. Unfortunately, the person wasn't there. As he was talking about it, as he was going through the entire situation, I think it was me, Rob. I think I came up with if that other company is so much less expensive per month, then could there be an opportunity to train their internal person, get them at least to your basic knowledge level, and then that way, I mean, you can still get a really nice monthly rate, but you're not dealing with the level one issues because, let's face it, 60 to 80% of tickets tend to be level one issues. If you can get rid of those and just handle the higher level things, it's not a bad day either, right? He did go down that road as well, so that was good. I was glad that he did that. So really what it boiled down to was he just wasn't hearing anything, right? So then we were coming up with different strategies on how to get him into that person who doesn't really want to respond to him. No. And we came down to really one of two things. And the first one was he has a good enough relationship with the CEO, who's the person he's got, he's just knows him much better. One possible solution was just go to the CEO on the download and just be like, hey, where do I stand here? Right? Like, friend to friend or business associate to business associate, whatever you want to call it. Where do we stand? He didn't feel comfortable because he felt like that may get pushed up to the other person who's ultimately going to be making, he's a board member, going to be making the decision. So we're like, all right, we kind of went back to the drawing board. We talked about just some of the things that I used to do when we were in the MSP industry. And one of those was very simple email. Look, client, we've been with you a long time. I know I've been following up with you a lot, right? He had been, but not too much, but he had been doing it a lot. He wanted an answer, and rightfully so. So the email he sent was basically, look, I'm just trying to float the line between being persistent and annoying. if I'm floating on the annoying side, just let me know. I'm just I just want to make sure I've got all the right next steps, or that I know the right next steps, and that's it. And he sent that email, and he got a response within, probably half an hour of us being off the phone.
Yeah.
Rob?
Yeah, about
fair?
half an hour. Half an hour. But, like one of the things that I wanted to talk through was, the classical mistake that an MSP makes here, and we couldn't help him because he'd already done it, was he saw that his competitor, and because he had such a good relationship, he saw that his competitor had a lower price point per user, right? He immediately dropped his price $5 lower and sent in a new proposal before he even talked to us. So, like one of the classic mistakes that people on the MSP side make is they complain about everything being commoditized, yet they're the first ones to lower their price, right? And this was not a price issue. This was a value issue and a relationship issue. And so he needed to go in there with his 20-year relationship and talk from a position of trust. But instead of doing that, he freaked out. And okay, so first off, let me give him a little kudos. We're talking about thousands of dollars on the line monthly, right? Yeah. This isn't some little deal that you can practice on. This was a big chunk of money. And so
this was not a base hit.
Yeah, this was an elephant. Run. Yeah, this was definitely a home run. And so, he was in a little bit of panic mode. And we were the last resort in this one. We weren't, in front here. And so the one thing that I would always make sure is you have to sell value first. Price is always last. Price is the absence of value, right? For most MSPs. And he jumped into that model. So Brian, I kind of like to ask you, Brian, you've had a successful MSP, you worked at a successful MSP, and now you work with MSPs all over the country. How do you pull people out of that price mentality and get them to think value, value, value?
So I'm going to answer that question by probably taking a little different bent on this conversation and looking at this case study as a shame on the owner of the company that was going in, right? And what I mean by that is, first thing you got to do, if you want to drive value, you got to bring value, right? So you've got to keep in tune with what the industry is bringing forward and make sure you're adapting your business model to it, right? You mentioned this person's a break fix person that now is kind of exploring an MSP. Well, we were an MSP in 2002, so this is not new uncharted waters, right? But but MSPs were pretty mainstream starting around 2005, 2006, right? So the point is, if you're going to portray value, you have to bring value, and there's never been value in 2020, really in the last decade, in just being a break fix person. And if I say that with kind regard and love to all the break fix people out there, but you got to be looking at how to innovate and not necessarily keep up with the Joneses, but make sure that you're at least bringing the best service forward to your customer. You've got to look at yourself and say, how do we continually innovate this company? Now, we believe very strongly at my company about innovation. That's what we're all about. But every company should be really saying to ourselves, how do we make sure that we're not growing stale in that? Then I'll go to part two. Then you can't grow stale in your relationships. There's a saying that, you're supposed to know the sign of the cross. You got to know 3 up, 3 down, 3 on each side within an organization. This person allowed themselves to get lulled into complacency by having a relationship with who perceptionally they saw as the top person by title, right? CEO, I think I'm talking to the very top. But we also know a lot of these organizations are flat. So if we got a flat organization and there's 2 partners, one might be president, the other's the CEO, but let's be clear, they're both making decisions. So you need to have some level of relationship over that time. And if you can't establish a relationship even with the most aloof of people over 20 years, which I think is what you said, this customer had that prospect.
Unbelievably long time,
That's, and again, I'm not meaning to criticize here. It's just a shame on you for not working that network a little bit better. You got to know the decision maker, the other people, then downstream, you got to know who the key stakeholders are in tech. I'll let you jump in, Tim.
Yeah. So it's just, and one other thing that just what you just said triggered something. So these 2 business owners, they didn't talk for like 10 years.
That's right.
2 of them.
Yeah.
The 2 of them.
They were
2
very
business partners didn't talk for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And they still barely talk. It's really more by email. So I will give them a pass on that one. He has been actively trying to. So 2 passes I'll give him. One, he has been trying to move, or
I'll counter that though, Tim, with what you're underestimating here is what you shared. The other business owner brought the other people to the table because he started thinking about innovation.
Yeah, they got a hold of Mr. Aloof. They did.
Yeah. They called the right guy.
They called the right guy over and over and over.
And they planted a bug in the ear to the point where that person, even if it was a strained relationship between these 2 partners, was able to convince the other partner that we should take this 20-year relationship that you value and at least explore other options.
Like, here's what I tell all my owners. You either have to have an evergreen contract, meaning it automatically renews on an annual basis, or you've got to get in there 6 months early on that contract end date and renew the contract. Because if you let yourself slip into a month-to-month because the contract expired and it's in a month-to-month, then you only have 30 days to defend yourself. And me as a sales rep has forever. So I'm slowly building the relationship. And then once they give that notice, and you only have 30 days to be like, whoa, what? So one of the most important things is always have an evergreen, or always make sure you renew that contract and get that thing up. And that's one of the mistakes that he made. And he actively chose, and I'll give him this. He's a very smart guy. He actively chose to go down the break fix model because everybody else was going MSP, and he thought he could grab a significant part of the market share. And he did. He's got a pretty big company. But now he's got a pretty big company in COVID where everything is break fix. And, the break fix model, you don't know what's going on in 30 days, right? Because you're only as good as, everything that's coming through in the first 2 weeks. So and that's why he brought us on, is to move into the MSP market. It was just a mistake. There was a lot of mistakes here. And number one mistake I'll give you, Brian, long-term, no client knowledge past the point of contact. He lulled himself into a big paycheck every month. He did his work, everything was fine, and didn't do the work to prep himself on the back end. Number 2, he didn't go in with the MSP contract when he knew he needed to go in with an MSP contract, and now he's working from a beta position. That's number 2. And number 3. I mean, Tim, help me out here. He broke the price model immediately. It went straight to, okay, well, I can beat that price. Instead of selling him on the value and the understanding of the network over 10, 20 years, whatever it's been, working with these people, he provided no value and only provided commodity because he was so scared because there was so much money on the line.
But he did 100%. He did. That was probably, to me, that's probably the largest mistake. I don't know. They all kind of hold water, but
look, anyways, that one the customer sees through because it becomes a desperation Hail Mary. They can smell that desperation. Yeah. And we've always said this desperate salesperson never wins, right?
Ever.
Yeah. Yeah. But I will say that even with him doing that, and being in that submissive position that he's been in for the last couple of weeks, he did as good a job as he could have, being in the position that he created for himself, and he knows that. That was so. Look, we're saying a lot of words about everything he did wrong. At the end of the day, the people did get back to him. Hopefully, he's going to be able to close this thing. He's still going to be able to make his margins, and that I'm not saying that's all that matters because that's not true, but that helps.
I'm going to take a step back and say it's not about wrong or right here, and I hope we're not portraying it as a wrong thing. It's steps taken, and it's things that commonly happen. If you don't think that I haven't taken some of my better paying customers for granted over time when I was an MSP, felt comfortable in that relationship and didn't act as aggressively. Next month we'll do the QBR. Exactly. And say that didn't happen during my career, well, then I'd be bold-faced lying to you, right? But you got to learn from the experience, right? Once that happens once, the old saying, once, shame on you, twice, shame on me, third time, oh my God, right? So, you just got to make sure it doesn't get to that point. Yeah. And, really, I'm sure he's learning something from it, but I do come back to, the business perspective on this. You got to stay in tune with what's going on in your surroundings. Tim, you mentioned that he stayed in break fix because he thought that would be an opportunity to scoop up all this other business that's out there. Well, there's no reason that he couldn't have been making a transition with a small part of the business to go after the MSP space exclusively while managing this break fix area. And again, if technology's taught us nothing, it's cyclical, right? You know, when I started in 99, we sold projects, period, end of conversation. That was it, right? And there was a certain set of products that were really huge then. Then we started doing the MSP stuff, which was all about remote monitoring at first being the most amazing thing. Well, then when everybody got comfortable with monitoring, you better be showing me something in the remediation column for that as well. Then we started moving into the cloud, right? And all of a sudden we had to change our business models from we're going to sell you a bunch of equipment and make some points on site, and we're going to have refreshes every X, Y, and Z to, oh, wow, most of the stuff's in the cloud now and the refresh game's gone. Right. And then you move forward to today where really because of risk in cyber threats, security is taking the front seat. So basically, I've just covered the 20 years that you're telling me this guy's been in business doing break fix. And that's how I've seen MSPs have to adapt over time or perish. So again, it's not a criticism. It's just something for all business owners that are listening to this.
Adapt or die.
You don't got to be bleeding edge. But my God, just at least keep in tune with the industry so you make sure that you're not the odd man looking out because it's felt that your business model's outdated.
He chose a different path. He made it successful, and now he's got to change it. And he understands that he's behind the eight ball. But I will say this, you know, out of all the things that we talked about here, Brian, this is for you. Which of the mistakes that he made is the biggest one that is the biggest no-no to you?
I'm going to grapple with that one because I would say the biggest thing he should have done is stayed more in touch with his clients along the way. Because I think that's it. I thought you might have been fishing for he lowered his price because I just hate that part.
I hate that part, but that was a reaction. That was a reactive thing based on everything. And, you know, not for nothing, but his price drop did save the deal because he was already in that position. So the price drop did save the deal, but there was a point in time that he never needed to get to that price drop. Right. And so I totally agree with you, you know, like, you know, and this is going back to the last week's presentation, like staying on top of people, making sure that you find ways to get a hold of them and talk to them, even if there's no projects on the horizon, finding those ways to engage with the client so you can keep building that and building the hooks and building that relationship will save you when, you know, pesky sales guys like Timmy.
Look, I told him, he was explaining everything that happened and how they've been doing just month to month break fix with this. It was kind of a weird contract. They were getting a fixed amount, but it was still break fix. But still, it was at the end of the day, it was a 30-day contract every 30 days. And I was, one of the first comments I said to him was, "You're not going to like this, but that sales guy did a damn good job."
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
He's been dripping on that company for like
forever,
18 months.
Oh yeah, forever.
And it just, it just took that 1 month. Caught the guy on the wrong day.
Yep.
And
saying the same thing over and over and over.
Yep.
Proactive. All right, guys. So we're almost out of time for this week. Tim, you got anything you want to close out with there? Any quick passing or ending comments?
I think we've talked about it at length, right? But I think just what you said, or what both of you said, stay on top of your clients. Don't let them fall by the wayside. There's never, you can't communicate with them too much. I mean, it's pretty hard, right? Especially if you're just dropping in and saying hi.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that a little bit. So to like sum up the experience that we had in this case study, he wasn't proactive with his client, right? He was only proactive with the people who he enjoyed speaking with. The other guy was aloof and wasn't a good conversation to have. So he avoided it. Like over time and over the years and years and years, he avoided the conversation. I'll just call the guy that I like. We have a great relationship. We talk about this and that and the other. It's good. You got to talk to the people, like the cross, the Holy Cross. It's up, down, left, and right. You got to talk to everybody in the organization. And although his price drop worked as a last resort, it's always got to be a last resort. And in the absence of everything else, it's savings. So he didn't provide the value, and so he had to provide the savings. So that would be the last things that I would talk about in this one. Always consider the value first.
Mhm.
Right. Well, you guys have said it all. I've got nothing more to say. So with that being said, I thank everybody for joining us this week. We'll be back here next Thursday, as we always are. Tim, Rob, thanks for all the insights, and we'll get together again soon.
Sure.
Take
care.
Good. Thanks. Have a good one.